The federal election won't be held until October, but the campaigning has already started in earnest right across the nation. In Lethbridge, the Liberals have a new candidate, Amy Bronson. Good to have you with us, Amy. So welcome to Bridge City News. Tell us a little bit about yourself first of all.
Hi, Paul. Thanks so much for having me today. So absolutely, I am the new federal Liberal candidate for Lethbridge for the October election. And Lethbridge is the region I was raised in. My mother is a nurse and my father is a small business owner in the beef cattle industry. So I grew up visiting ranches and feedlots around this community, really understanding our ties to agriculture, as well as the strong public services and understanding of our healthcare system. And that really shapes my values. And as I grew up in Lethbridge, I was participated in the performing arts community. I graduated from LCI and I went on to education, higher education. I've since then worked across Canada as well as internationally in a variety of nonprofit and private sector roles, and now building a career as a management consultant. I've worked nationally. So, I live in Lethbridge and I'm really happy to be here and honored to be representing my hometown in this election.
Well, very good. Now, what's the motivation, with all that background to get involved in politics, the blood sport essentially, right?
Yeah, it's, sometimes it's not for the faint of heart, and frankly the motivation to get involved in politics and the Liberal Party in Southern Alberta is because you care. And I'll tell you what I care about. I see throughout my experiences, I've seen the role that the federal government really can play. When you have a strong representative championing your region and your riding, really working with the constituency across all of its different unique needs, and Lethbridge is a really interesting, unique region, that really makes a difference. I'm also very passionate and committed to the democratic process in this country, and I believe in the role that campaigns play in having a strong presence across parties in each and every part of this country, Lethbridge in particular, because you get to reach the community, and that's the kind of approach that I'm bringing, and I seek to be the member of Parliament in Lethbridge so I can do that hard work for the community.
Okay. You're an artist. You mentioned that. Anything you're going to do with funding for the arts? That's always a bit of an election issue. Maybe not the top issue, but, hey, you're an artist, right?
Yeah, for myself, I'm a singer-songwriter, folk musician. This remains a hobby of mine as I've gone on to my professional business career. I have recorded albums and played throughout the community. It's been an amazing, supportive place. The Lethbridge Performing Arts community really adds a lot of value to this region. It brings us together, provides us entertainment. It's key. I'm proud that the Liberal Party of Canada really values our arts and culture, will invest in that, is keen to invest in the local communities and support those initiatives. And there's more to arts and culture investments than jobs for artists or enjoying ourselves and having that important entertainment and identity building. This is actually about the economic activity around the arts. For every arts job, we see also jobs surrounding that. We have technical jobs, trades jobs. It brings economic activity and prosperity and really enhances our experiences in Canada.
Okay. Now, switching from maybe one that isn't the top issue seems to be almost always, and you did tie in the arts with this, but that's jobs, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Every politician always has that at the top of their list. Job creation, easier said than done, but what would you do to see jobs increase here in Southern Alberta?
Yeah, absolutely. Jobs are key, and Alberta in particular, where that issue is top of mind for Albertans and Southern Albertans as well. So, the Liberal track record, the federal Liberal government since 2015 has had a great track record on job creation. We've had 1 million jobs created since then, and we need to see more of that growth in the Lethbridge riding, in the Lethbridge region. And in order to do that, I think we need to have conversations about what are our unique assets here. We have incredible agriculture, and we're able to access incredible talent from our local university, our local college. Are we talking to those value-added agriculture manufacturers? Are we listening to them to talk about expanding? And also, are we taking advantage of the technology here that we can be working with? Are we bringing technology entrepreneurship that leverages our agricultural assets? Those are the kind of conversations I want to have throughout the campaign and hopefully as a member of Parliament. And, frankly, let's talk about the jobs that we want to keep, because there's a key to job creation. That's great. We also need to keep the jobs we have. And we've had thousands of jobs in call centers in Lethbridge over our time here. I worked in a call center in Lethbridge when one day we went to work and we found out that our jobs were going to move south of the border. And I want to ask, where were our politicians? Where was our federal representative when those things happened? How do we work to keep those jobs here when those kinds of things happen?
Okay. You want to keep the jobs as well, and that does make sense. Now, one thing that is huge in this election is, of course, the energy sector in Alberta. And the federal Liberals have taken a fair bit of flack over, again, pipelines not being built or getting stopped partway through or being delayed and so forth. So what would you do, I guess, to keep the pipelines going that we have and get some new ones going, especially Trans Mountain and so forth? What would it take to get that happening?
Yeah, I think the Liberal government's been extremely clear on its commitment to this pipeline and to the Trans Mountain pipeline being built, making the historic investment in purchasing that pipeline, as well as really working to get that built across into our tidewater. What we didn't see, though, is also important. So under 10 years of the Harper Conservative government, we did not get a pipeline built. So this is actually historic, unprecedented action that actually sees us making progress towards completing that pipeline. And that commitment is extremely clear, and that commitment's going to carry through the next election and through the next term.
Now, this ties in a little bit with climate change as well, which is always a federal election issue. But let me ask you, I guess, what needs to happen with climate change to protect the environment, but also at the same time talking about, putting Trans Mountain into effect and hopefully more energy projects. A big complaint we hear from the business owners is that there's too much red tape to jump through, especially around climate change. And there's so much uncertainty, it's always changing. So how do you invest, millions, billions of dollars into something you're not sure where it's headed?
I think when we look at climate change, this is an issue that's really affects each and every one of us. Climate, increasing temperature. We know now that Canada is warming faster than other countries. This is important, and this is impactful on agriculture. It is not good for the agricultural industry to have uncertain temperatures, to have uncertain futures in agriculture, and pollution isn't good for us. It's not good for our kids. It's not good for for the future. And so when we see the impacts of climate change, affecting us, increasing forest fires, increasing flooding, that's expensive as well. That pushes up the rates of insurance. That pushes up our need for our responders to be there. It strains those resources, and action is needed. And it's not a new issue. Climate change was an enormous issue in the previous election. It's an issue in all of the elections. This is not new, and what's new, I think, is action. The Liberal Party has been making action to implement a climate plan. This plan to address some of these key issues. This is a very this has been tested throughout Canada in other jurisdictions as well. So there is a proof points. There are proof points behind this plan.
Okay, now part of this plan is the carbon tax, and that of course is a huge issue in this election. It's supposed to cause businesses to emit less because it's going to cost them more. With carbon emissions, right? So they're going to have to pay for it. But what if that doesn't work? What if people in this business, in the energy business, decide to, well, you know what? We can afford to pay this tax, and so we're going to keep on doing that, passing on the cost to the consumers and so forth, and yet the emission levels stay the same. So what if that happens? Are you going to keep on going with the carbon tax federally?
So the idea of the carbon pricing, putting that price on pollution and this levy, it's a free market-based solution. So it works, it works that way, and that is, I think, valuable for the business community as it is free market-based. Now, it also has been proven to work and has had good results in British Columbia. We've also seen it in other jurisdictions. That those are kind of the key facts that we need to be remembering as we move forward with this plan.
But if the emission levels don't change, I mean, do you think this carbon tax is actually going to change the level of emissions? In
other areas, we have seen that, yes, that happens. And it is crucial that this action is taken.
Okay. All right. Well, let's drop back to agriculture here as well. You had mentioned that you grew up on a kind of a beef farm, feedlot, that sort of thing. It is certainly one of the backbones of our Canadian economy. What needs to happen to improve situations for whether you're a canola farmer, grain farmer, of course, canola in the news these days, but beef and pork exports also being threatened. So any thoughts on how we can find new markets or do something to change our situation with China, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really, as you mentioned, it was really key in my family. We, certainly feel the direct impacts of of our international relationships, and especially, our relationship. We have a very strong relationship with our neighbor to the south, and this is key. So we need, taking that action that we've taken to, stay strong as we negotiate the new NAFTA, and we're getting to that point now where we do have the USMCA agreement. So we're holding steady with our most important friend and neighbor to the south, where we can keep that strong relationship really tied to our agriculture community here. That's key. We've also seen in 2016, the Liberal government negotiated the removal of all remaining restrictions for our beef exports to Mexico. This did not happen under the Conservative government, and that's been really an important thing, as they're our third largest export market for that industry. So that's key. We also are diversifying, our trade strategy, making sure that we have new trade agreements. We've seen a number of those signed under the leadership of the Liberal government. The CTPP enhances our access to Asian markets outside of the Chinese market, and this is key. I was catching up with a friend of mine who works in Tokyo. She's Southern Albertan. She works for a similar company as I've worked for in Tokyo, and we were catching up, and she says, guess what I saw last week? I went down to the local butcher and I saw Lethbridge pork. She bought Lethbridge pork in Tokyo, and she served it up to her Japanese colleagues, and they loved it. And that's the kind of thing we see when we have expanded trade agreements with countries like Japan. And that's the work that I want to continue to do as a member of Parliament for Lethbridge, and really promote that export diversification.
Cool story to see Lethbridge
Yeah,
pork
it's
in Japan.
awesome. We got to
Absolutely.
champion things around here.
That's good. All right. Healthcare, always an election issue. Now, people I talk to do get frustrated with seeing how much money gets poured into the system. It just, every year it keeps on going up, right? And yet we still face, long lineups for things that we need, whether it's an MRI or a doctor visit and so forth. So what needs to change?
Yeah, in regards to the healthcare, industry, the Liberal government has enhanced the transfers for the healthcare sector to the provinces, and really is committed to working on that issue interprovincially and jurisdictionally. So.
Right, but that is providing more money. But again, it doesn't seem to be fixing the problem, right? So on the one hand, we do have, let's say, conservative right of center parties tend to say, well, can we do something with the private sector, right? Now, some would argue, say, well, that's U.S.-style healthcare. But on the other hand, we do see, jurisdictions like Sweden, Switzerland, Great Britain. These aren't right-of-center, constituencies that are using this, it seems, with some success to, reduce the lineups and provide better efficiency in healthcare. So, what can we do as Canadians to actually make the system work, to cut down the lines, other than throwing more money at it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think one of the first places to start is cuts aren't the answer. The kind of cuts that we do see that immediately happen when we are in a conservative environment, a conservative political environment, those cuts are not going to reduce those wait times unless we have a really strong understanding of what's going on in our healthcare system. How do we work with the people delivering those services, understanding the roadblocks that they're facing, as they go through their system, and really understanding that, working across jurisdictions and making sure that money goes to where it needs to go, and working with those local delivery partners across jurisdictions. Okay,
but if cuts aren't made, and again, the cost for healthcare keeps on going up, right? So we have deficits that we want to deal with. I mean, I think the general consensus from the whole population is that we'd rather not see, deficits continue, right? So any thoughts on where do we go with that? How do we balance that, where we're at some point hopefully getting rid of the deficits and, clearing up our budgets, getting them balanced and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think, as you mentioned, the healthcare costs rising, the healthcare costs, we want to make sure that that is something that at the federal level we are coordinating on. And one of the things that has been proposed in the federal budget for 2019 is that national pharmacare plan. So that is something that is really designed to, and if, as we go forward with that budget, that is something that's designed to cut those costs. And where the federal government is able to do so, that is a clear plan, a clear action that we want to take, and we want to see taken, and I want to advocate for that.
So you think pharmacare would actually reduce costs?
Yeah, that's the aim of that system. Is we need to be able to to reduce those costs by having increased coordination on how we're delivering pharmaceuticals.
Right, although there certainly would be a cost to that, of course, with tax dollars essentially paying for the drugs, right?
Tax dollars are paying for the drugs now, and it is a plan that is going to be, a more effective way to purchase those and work together across the country.
Right, yeah, it could reduce the cost of the actual drugs.
Exactly.
Although again, at this point, a lot of people are paying out of pocket for it, whereas this would put it more on the government. The education system, your thoughts on what needs to change in our education system?
Education is incredibly important for our country and our region, and to continue to prosper. And so I think when we think about education, we want to think about what's happening as well with our employment, what's happening in our jobs and our industries, and what are those needs, and how do we work on that. The Liberal government's commitments have really been around thinking about how do we enhance lifelong learning. How do we enable people to continue to grow those skills that are essential, that match our job market? And when we're thinking about things that are how do we build our careers for the future of work. As a millennial generation, we're not experiencing the same employment security that people have had before. So we have to be ready to adapt as a country and as a system, as post-secondary, for skills training. The Canada Training Benefit is one example of that, proposed in the budget 2019. That's going to bring people, abilities to more flexibly upskill, get new skills throughout their careers. We've also really seen, enhanced commitments to co-op placements in the post-secondary education system that are essential, that build those skills for us so that we can go into employment and come to the market with those skills.
Well, we're up against the clock and we're out of time already.
But, great. Wow.
Yeah, but thank you, Amy. Appreciate your time here today.
Good. Well, thanks so much for having me, Paul. I am so excited to be here in Lethbridge, and I can't wait to meet all of your viewers at their doors and say hi.
All right. Good luck to you. Amy Bronson, the federal Liberal candidate for Lethbridge.